A big applause for Dr. Sailesh, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. So I want to start this activation weekend off by saying what we are activating for. We are activating for a vegan world in 8 years. By 2026. It might seem like a very ambitious project, but I have to tell you that I've been through this twice before. We as human beings have done a lot of things with abrupt changes. We've done abrupt changes throughout our lives. In fact, history is a chronicle of all the abrupt changes that we have done. But at any given point in time, we think that whatever we are doing now is going to remain like that forever, and we get very worried. So I'm telling you that this is going to happen because we have no choice but to make it happen from an environmental perspective. So back in 1995, there was an article in Newsweek saying the internet is going nowhere. Who's going to read things on the internet? Who's going to buy stuff off the internet? It'll never happen. It'll never happen. And 10 years later, I overheard someone say, I cannot live without the internet. And we made that abrupt change because a dedicated group of people got together and said, how can we make this happen? And we worked to make it happen. And in 2005, someone told me that gay marriage will never happen. And 10 years later, it was normal. And the reason it was normal and 10 years later was because a group of LGBT people worked together, organized, and made it happen. So in 2015, I was giving a presentation at the American Geophysical Union fall meeting here in San Francisco at Moscone Center. And we showed that if the whole world goes vegan, we can sequester more carbon on recovering forests on just 41% of the land that gets released from animal agriculture than all the carbon we have added to the atmosphere since 1750. We can literally reverse climate change. And over 100 climate scientists came to talk to me during my presentation and during the meeting. And they said, you are right, but it'll never happen. So I told them, in 10 years it will be normal. Because that's the way it has always been in my life. Okay? So I'm going to talk to you about Vegan World 2026 and how and why we need to make it happen. So I'm a systems specialist. I've been working on this for 12 years. And as a systems specialist, my job is to take stories told in different disciplines and put them together so that it makes sense. So in that sense, I'm here to recruit all of you to be part of this Vegan World 2026 project. Because this is not going to happen unless we all get together and say we are determined to make it happen, and we will work to make it happen. I started Climate Healers 12 years ago, and to me, healing is about reversing, it's about making things whole. It's about reversing climate change so that we no longer have to put up with increased frequencies of hurricanes and increased temperatures. Why would we want to do that when we can reverse it? HEAL is an acronym for Human, Earth, Animal Liberation. All of it has to happen. I just came from an animal liberation conference that happened over the last week. And now these 2 days, we're going to be talking about human liberation and earth liberation. HEAL is also an acronym for health, environment, animals, and love. Because that's why we go vegan for. I have to tell you that when I started working on this, it was probably the most depressing project I ever worked on. The environment is going to hell in a handbasket. That was my conclusion. And I thought, as a single human being, there is nothing much I can do about this. So back in 2009, I was probably the most depressed. I was in this sanctuary in the Western Ghats of India. And the sanctuary is absolutely beautiful, as you can see. But what depressed me was what happened when I was in the sanctuary. It was started by a couple from New Jersey. And they went to India, they bought a coffee plantation, they tore down the fences and let it go. And it became this beautiful sanctuary. So I asked Pamela, what did you do to make this happen? She said, nothing. I just tore down the fences and the animals came and dropped their seeds and the forest came back. I said, that's it? That's all we have to do? She said, no, one other thing we had to do. We had to patrol the land and make sure that no human being comes inside. So at that point, I felt extremely small. I felt as if I don't belong on Earth. Because you see, I was born in this forest, just 200 miles away from where the sanctuary is located. So I felt like, I don't belong on Earth. I don't belong in my own birthplace. So this was the most depressed I ever got working on the environment. And then a year later, this girl was born. This is our granddaughter, Kimaya. And she was born in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were living in Danville at that time. And as soon as she was born, I realized that my wife was no longer home. She just took off. She went to Phoenix and she wouldn't come back. So after about a month, she came to me and she said, there is something magical about this girl. You have to go see her. So I went to see her, and I held her in my arms for the first time, and I had the exact same feeling of perfection that I had at the sanctuary a year earlier. So I realized that she belongs exactly as she is. We all must belong exactly as we are, except that we are not telling the right story. You see, as human beings, we tell stories, and this is how we coordinate our actions. And if you're not telling the right story, we get confused. We don't know what we're doing. So if you look at it from a philosophical perspective, there are really three main questions that we answer every time. Who are we? What is our relationship with the world? And why are we here? So you have to answer these questions. In fact, every one of us answer these questions for every action we take. So as a species, we have to answer these questions correctly so that we know our place in the universe. We know our place in the ecosystem. So who are we as a species? We are probably the only species that can congregate in the thousands and the millions and the billions, believe a single story, and act according to that story. We are a very unique species in that sense. The story of money. Money is a story. It's just a piece of paper with a picture of dead presidents on them. But we give so much value to that piece of paper because we all buy into that story. So suppose all 7.5 billion of us get together. We get together, say, around here. How big of a space do we need? Let's say we decide to eat together and have a meal. How big of a dining hall do you think we will need? Can you take a guess? Would it be as big as California? As big as the United States? For 7.5 billion of us to come together? It's about the size of the Bay Area. The traffic could be horrendous. But in a 60-mile by 60-mile dining hall, you can seat all 7.5 billion of us and meet fast food regulations. Okay? So imagine we build that hall. And we decide to have a meal together. What would be your menu choice? So if we choose an organic vegan meal as the menu choice, you would need to procure 1.5 million tons of food per meal. And at the end of the meal, you can take all the seeds from the meal and go out there and plant 1.5 million acres of land. And you can do that for the next 8,000 meals, for the next 8 years. And at the end of 8 years, you will have Vegan World 2026. You will have Eden. You will have so much abundance. And you would only be using up all the land we are currently using for animal agriculture by doing this. Now suppose instead you decide to eat the meal that we are eating today. All of us decide that we are going to eat what we are eating today. To do that, you need to serve 9 million tons of food. 6 times as much as what we were doing with the organic plant foods. Why is that? Because the other 7.5 million tons has to be fed to the animals that are outside. So they're eating 7.5 million tons of food, 5 times as much food as we do. So we eat about half a pound per person per meal. You have to take another 2.5 pounds and feed it to the animals. And from those 2.5 pounds, they return back to us 1 ounce. So from that abundance of 9 million tons of food that you've taken, you have now created scarcity, because you only get 1 ounce per person of animal food. Most people will say, I need more than that. You know, the average American eats 3 ounces per meal. So how do you get them the 3 ounces that they want? You'll have to take it from other people. Now, for every meal, you have to go and kill 2 billion animals. Who's going to do that? You have to pick on people. You have to tell people, let's say people of color, to go out and do the killing. You have to go and destroy 20,000 acres of forests. You have to degrade like 7 billion acres of land, 7 million acres of land per meal. Who is going to do that? You have to pick on people again. So this is how you get racism, sexism, colonialism built into our food system. And it is so absurd if you think about it. This is the system we have inherited. This is the system of normalized violence that we have inherited. And the transition that we are making now is to go from a system of normalized violence to a system of normalized non-violence, which is vegan world. So if we do this, we eat conventional foods, we are killing 52% of wild vertebrates from between 1970 and 2010. So we'll continue killing them. So we killed 52% between 1970 and 2010, and that became 58% between 1970 and 2012. So we are losing 3% of wild vertebrates every year. And at that rate, by 2026, we are going to kill all of them off. As far as the animals are concerned, they are in this horror movie where they don't know where to hide, because we find them and we kill them. See, it is not just the animals that we are farming that we kill. We kill the wild animals. If they come into our farms, we kill them. We destroy their forests, so they have no place to live, so we kill them. Or they're swimming in the ocean and we go out and catch them and we kill them. These days it's getting harder and harder to catch fish, so therefore we are using big data software and geolocation technologies to find the last remaining fish so that we can kill them. This is all a product of our food system. And on top of that, we are pouring 250 billion tons of toxic chemicals into the environment every year. That's killing the insects, and then the birds eat the insects and the birds die. To put that in perspective, 250 billion tons is the equivalent of 30 tons of chemicals per person per year. And that is working its way up the food chain. So if you eat animal foods, you're going to get a concentrated dose of those toxins in the foods you eat, and therefore you'll fall sick. And this is how the whole system is set up right now. And on top of that, we are pouring 60 billion tons of greenhouse gases into the environment every year. And of that, 36 billion tons is carbon dioxide. And the only thing environmentalists talk about is the 36 billion tons of carbon dioxide. Like Al Gore, he only talks about that. So they are framing this problem so that you are looking at just fossil fuels as the main problem and not our food. This is the cowspiracy that's going on, and it's widespread. It's not just among environmental NGOs or healthcare NGOs, it's happening among climate scientists, it's happening among government officials. Everyone is involved in this cowspiracy. So it looks like we are a sociopathic species. This is the relationship we have with other species at the moment. And this is very depressing. So then I had to figure out, why are we here? Because when you answer the why question correctly, you can try to correct for this sociopathic behavior. So that's the most important question. So we did this short documentary. I'll show you that. The sound.
Is humanity nothing more than a cancer on the planet, consuming its host until it is gone, guaranteeing its own destruction in the process? A quick glance at the effects of our behavior might lead us to say yes. But looks can be deceiving. Nature shows us that what is destructive on one level can also be part of a larger process of change that creates new forms of value at another level. Consider the Indian elephant. At first glance, the elephant appears to be destructive as she tramples through the forest, breaking limbs from trees, eating all the jackfruit, and littering the landscape with huge piles of poop. But when we look closer, we see that the trampling provides pathways for the other animals in the forest. The breaking of tree branches allows the sun's rays to reach the forest floor, enabling plants to grow in the understory. And elephant poop contains jackfruit seeds buried in fertile manure, which propagates the jackfruit tree. Like the elephant, could it be that some of humanity's destructive behavior might actually have some positive unintended consequences? As we look back at Earth's story, we learn that its climate has been vastly different throughout its history. When dinosaurs roamed the land, Earth was void of ice. The sea level was hundreds of meters higher and the temperature 10 degrees warmer than it is today. Modern science has learned that there is a direct relationship between the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and the Earth's temperature. Greenhouse gases are like a blanket around the Earth, absorbing just the right amount of heat from the sun to make life possible. The higher the concentration, the warmer the temperature. In Earth's more recent history, it has endured a series of long ice ages. During each ice age, life struggles to survive. Imagine a 1-mile thick sheet of ice on top of Chicago. All the forests die. Most of the life in the forest die, as very little can survive in these extreme conditions. Every 100 millennia, a slight change in the Earth's tilt allows the planet to absorb just enough additional heat to thaw some of the ice. Life expands for a few thousand years during this interglacial period before retreating again as the Earth tilts back and falls into another ice age. Enter human beings. From the Earth's perspective, humans are new to the scene. We've been here for a blink of an eye. But we've been busy. As the Earth entered its most recent interglacial period, humans began deforesting the Earth to fuel their ancient civilizations. It is calculated that more greenhouse gases were released into the atmosphere through deforestation than all the gases emitted from the burning of fossil fuels. Humans, unknowingly to them, warmed the Earth, delaying the onset of the next ice age. It turns out that there's a safe zone when it comes to greenhouse gas concentrations that keeps Earth at just the right temperature for life as we know it to thrive. Any less and we freeze, any more and we fry. In the last few decades, we've blown past this safe zone way too fast for life today to adjust, as we continue to destroy the forests for animal agriculture and find destructive new ways of extracting fossil fuels, adding ever more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. While our actions have had devastating impacts to many species on the planet, They've also enabled humans to develop the technology necessary to monitor Earth's composition. Like the part of the brain that helps stabilize and regulate our body's temperature, humans now have the ability to help Earth regulate its temperature. We've already been doing it unconsciously for thousands of years.
Perhaps it's time we become conscious of our role on the planet as the thermostat species. When we choose to stop eating animals, the land used for raising those animals can be restored to forests. And those forests can sequester all of the greenhouse gases we've emitted during the fossil fuel age, bringing us back within a safe zone where life as we know it can thrive.
This requires that humanity undergo a metamorphosis from an egocentric consumer culture to an ecocentric, life-enriching culture. Again, nature shows us how this is done. A caterpillar spends his entire life, from the moment he is born, eating. He eats the nutritious shell he was born out of. Then he eats the leaf the egg was clinging to. The caterpillar continues eating all the leaves he encounters. Once fully satiated, the caterpillar attaches to the underside of a twig and begins growing a cocoon. New imaginal cells are born. At first, the imaginal cells are attacked by the caterpillar's immune system. But soon, they multiply and the immune system gives up. What was once a caterpillar is now a messy glob of imaginal goo. Soon, out of the cocoon emerges a beautiful butterfly. The butterfly is a very light consumer. As she sips the nectar, she pollinates the flowers, helping to regenerate life. Nurturing life instead of destroying it. The time has come for humanity to undergo its metamorphosis. Our imaginal cells are awakening. We have a unique opportunity in this pivotal time in history to realize our full potential by considering ourselves stewards of life, applying the lessons we've learned to nurture the conditions for life to thrive for all of Earth's remaining years.
Thank you. So right now we are in a position where the caterpillar is satiated. In fact, this was in 2010. You'll see that the total biomass of human beings alone was double the biomass of all the wild animals that lived 10,000 years ago. So our population alone was too much for the planet to sustain on a long-term basis. And on top of that, we were raising 5 times as much food for our farmed animals. So that's the weight we were carrying around. So we were satiated at that point, and the wild animals were down by like 80% by 2010. And since then, we have done 8 more years of the same thing. And our leaders have been doing nothing about this. So this is my granddaughter, and she was like 3 years old at that time, and we did this protest. We were trying to get Al Gore to talk about animal agriculture, and he doesn't in any of his presentations. So our leaders are doing nothing about this, and this was something that was bothering me a lot. So we decided to put money into documentaries to understand what was really going on. Once you understand, then you know what you can do about it. So we did 3 documentaries. The human experiment, which showed that we are pouring all these toxins out into the environment and nobody wants to talk about it. And then in COWSPIRACY, we see that people are being asked to eat animal foods, they're being promoted, and nobody wants to talk about it. So when you pour all these toxins, they work their way up the food chain and they get more and more concentrated in the animal foods. So if now you eat those animal foods, you're going to get sick. So then they come with pharmaceuticals and fix you in what the health. And this whole thing is a substantial part of the economy at the moment. And this is why nobody wants to talk about it. They don't want the whole thing to collapse. But this is like a cancerous growth in the economy. Why would we want to do something like this? Human beings are being farmed to make money for corporations. Literally like animals are being farmed. So can we not design a system where we don't have to do this to human beings? Are we not smart enough to do that? Of course we are. So we then tried to figure out, who are these people? Why are they doing this? Who are these people? And it turns out that the big meat corporations, the big pharma corporations, the big chemical corporations, and big media corporations all have the same 4 financial holding companies as the major shareholders. It's Fidelity, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. And they are feeding off of the global meat and dairy consumers. This is their source of profit. And if you look further, you can now go and verify that this is happening. You don't have to take my word for it. You can just go look it up yourself. You look further, you'll see that big banks, big oil, and big defense also have the same 4 financial holding companies. So they literally run the planet. These holding companies don't have to disclose who their shareholders are, so we don't know who they are, but we can guess. They run the planet, and so all the voting that we do once every 2 years or once every 4 years, it doesn't make much of a difference because they're all being funded by the same sources. And what are they doing right now about our environmental situation? They're absolutely doing nothing. For them, this is exactly the way they want it to go, because this is all about growth. So they're growing the economy. And their model is the year 0 model, which is by 2026, there'll be no more wild animals left. And if we get to this point, our necks are on the chopping block. And we cannot let it get to this point at all. This is why I say we have to do a vegan world 2026. We have to reverse this completely. Buckminster Fuller said this. He said he never changed things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Just work in parallel, do it on your own. And that's the new model. A vegan world by 2026, we grow veganism as fast as possible. And so we just have human beings and sanctuary animals, not farmed animals, by 2026. And we bring back the wild animals to at least the population that they had in 2010. That's our goal. That's what we are trying to do. And then over time, our population will decrease and the sanctuary animals will go back into the wild. So the wild animals will come back and the earth will recover. So this is returning back to Eden. Okay? And we can do this. This is a no-kill planet rescue. And year 0 can be pushed out to infinity when we do this. And we know that the earth can rebound because we know that just by returning the original forest that used to be there on the land that's currently being used for animal agriculture, you can sequester more carbon than we added to the atmosphere since 1750. You can reverse climate change, you can refreeze the Arctic. All the good things can happen if we just do this. And how soon can it rebound? Fairly quickly, actually. So here is an example of land that was fenced off from farmed animals in 2002, and by 2006 it became that. Nature is ready to recover if we let her recover. I used to show those two pictures during my talks, and people would ask me, are you sure they didn't take the first picture during summer and the second picture during winter? Maybe they're fooling you, right? And at that point I was a lacto-vegetarian in 2008. So I went there and I took the picture of the fence. On the right, animals are not allowed to graze. On the left, they were grazing. And I instantly went vegan. Because I realized that as a lacto-vegetarian, I was causing more harm than someone who's eating beef. Because I saw all these old cows walking around eating up the forest. And those cows were produced because I was demanding milk from them. So whereas if you were consuming beef, you would kill them off. See, I realized if I was exploiting cows, I have to exploit them fully. That's the best way to minimize my footprint. And of course I couldn't do that, so I went vegan.
I wish that everyone was vegan by 2026.
Saw a granddaughter today, and she's very much on board with the Vegan World 2026 project, as you can see. And the reason is, one day when she was about 6 years old, she asked me, who were the first humans, Grandpa? So I tried to explain to her about evolution. So I told her, imagine that you're standing on the street and you're holding your mama by your hand, and then you get her mama to come by her side, and you keep doing that. And on the other side of the street, you get a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mamas. By the time the line goes from Phoenix to Tucson, they will merge. Both lines will say, that's my mama too. And she thought about it and she said, are you telling me that animals are my family? Why are people eating my family? She started bawling. Why are people eating my family? Can you please make them stop? And I said, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm working on. I am trying to make them stop. She said, when will they stop? I said, 2026. By the time you're 16 years old, on your 16th birthday, it'll be a vegan world. And she told me, you have to give me a pinky promise, because nobody breaks a pinky promise. And I did. And the next day she came to me and she said, I heard that your job is very difficult. So you can do it by the time I'm 17 years old, not 16. So she gave me an extra year. But you see, I know that I've already taken an extra year. I know it's going to happen by 2025. See? So anyway, I told her I don't need the extra year. This is our campaign video. We are campaigning for this. In fact, you are voting, every one of us is voting 3 times a day on what kind of world we want. Okay? That's the most important vote we do. How do you vote? A vegan world 2026 or year 0 2026? Do you want a world of normalized non-violence? Do you want a world of normalized violence that is dead? So it's life, love, liberty versus death, disease, and destruction. Those are the options. It's obvious which way we are going to go. So this is why it is going to happen. It's inevitable, it's going to happen. How are others voting? 70% of human beings today are reducing their meat and dairy consumption. That's the good news. The bad news is that the other 30% are making up the difference. Okay? But as more and more of us cut it down completely, then the pressure will increase on the other 30%. Because this is not just about their personal choice anymore. The whole planet is dying. It's not a personal choice. No one has the right to kill me because of their actions, right? So there has been a 600% increase in vegans in the United States in the last 3 years. So that's how fast things are growing. The Hindu religion came out 2 years ago and said that everyone should go vegan. Okay? All Hindus should go vegan. So the religions are also getting involved, and we are going to have a conference in October to talk about all the changes that need to happen for us to get from a world of normalized violence to a world of normalized non-violence. Everything that needs to change. So it's a very participatory conference. It's not that people are going to just tell the participants what we are doing. It's that we are all going to get together and figure out this new system. Okay? So we just have some minor guidelines as to what we are working on, and the rest is going to be done by the people who come to participate. That's happening in Tempe, Arizona, October 26th to 28th, and you can go on our website and you can register for it right now. These are some of the things that we are going to be talking about. There are 40 different transitions that we have identified that need to happen. For instance, from unfettered growth to development, from planned obsolescence to robust durability, a whole bunch of things. It's not just about changing our eating habits, it's about changing everything that we do. And the time is right for this transformation. See, every major transformation in human history has happened when we changed three things. We changed how we communicated with each other, we changed how we harnessed energy, and we changed what we ate. So the discovery of fire 500,000 years ago, we started talking to each other, so that was the change in communications. For energy, we harnessed fire, and for food, it was cooking. Then in the agricultural revolution, about 12,000 years ago, it was writing, the communications change that happened. And for energy, we were harnessing animals for energy, and for food, we were growing our own crops. And in the industrial revolution 200 years ago, it was the printing press for communication, and for energy it was fossil fuels, and for food it was factory farms. And today, we are going through a major transformation. So for communications is the internet, and we need to take back the internet from the big corporations, and we are working on that. So that's the Holochain logo that you see there. So the internet that's truly distributed, and for energy it is solar energy and renewable energy, which is again distributed, is falling on our heads. We can just pick it up wherever we are. We don't have to depend on corporations to send it to us. And for food, it's growing our own food. It's vegan food, organic vegan food. So with these three things, we are going to distribute every part of our lives. And so we take back the power from these corporations that have taken it from us. And it's inevitable this is going to happen. We are also building a research and development facility in Costa Rica where we can try out this new culture of normalized nonviolence. What does it feel like to live like that? And then people can come and try it out. So it's a place, it's an experiential education facility where we try things out to see what works and what doesn't work. Okay? So a lot of universities are involved in this, and we are now fundraising for this project. And the reason we chose Costa Rica is because Costa Rica has a tremendous amount of biodiversity that is being lost as we speak because of cattle ranching. So we have picked this place, which is in the province, Guanacaste province, that is the cattle ranching capital of Costa Rica. And so it's like a beachhead from which we are going to grow this and recover our biodiversity. So what can you do? Please get involved. Please get active. And please join us for the Vegan World 2026 project. You can download all my slides, all these slides at climatehealers.org/slides, and you can read the slide notes and start giving this presentation to people that you know. Please do that, because this is a story that needs to go out to the whole world. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'm always available to answer questions. Now, Mahatma Gandhi tried to do the exact same thing 100 years ago. You see, he wanted to free India from the British, from British colonial rule. And In 1918, he started the Khadi movement. In the Khadi movement, he asked the people of India to change their clothes from British clothes to Khadi clothes made by Indians in India. It was a simple act that anybody could do, but it was a substantial act because the textile industry was the largest industry in England at that time. And it was a spiritual act because it connected the people of India together. They saw every one of them wearing the same clothes and they said, we are all in this together. And with that, he brought the British Empire to its knees in 12 years. By 1930, they were begging to negotiate with him. Until then, they were making fun of him. He was the half-naked fakir. So when the textile industry went bankrupt, they were on their knees. And we have the exact same opportunity today. And today is not about changing our clothes, it's about changing what we eat. If we all do that, it's a simple act, it is a substantial act because you can see the difference between eating organic plant foods versus what we are doing today. It's huge. And it's a spiritual act because it changes who we really are. I mean, it brings us back into alignment with who we really are when we change what we do there. So he said in 1926, it's my duty to induce people by any honest means necessary to wear khadi. He was a very militant activist. Okay? He went around changing people, asking them to change their clothes. And so today it is our duty to induce people by any honest means necessary to go vegan. The future of the earth depends on it. Depends on what we do. So you can check all the facts on our website. You can see all the references. I've written a couple of books, Carbon Dharma and Carbon Yoga. There are copies available out there. And you can also read them online at climatehealers.org/books for free. And there is another booklet that we wrote up with Brother Wolf called Meet the Metamorphosis. That's also available on our website and you can read that. That has all the details about what is really happening in the food system today. Okay, thank you very much.